Well, we saw you this morning, but you gave no hint. In fact, I was going to ask you before I was interrupted by someone else and just say, Senator, you said by the end of the year you were going to make this decision. You decided to keep it for this afternoon?
Well, I did. Actually, I decided this in August when I was fishing in Canada, and I decided that the people of Tennessee have been very generous to me. They've elected me governor and senator for more years than anybody else, and it's time for somebody else to have that privilege. And I wanted to keep it to myself until the end of the year and make sure it was the right decision. And I've decided that it is somebody else's turn. I get up every day thinking I can do some good for the country and go to bed at night thinking that I have. And I'll keep doing that for 2 more years, but this is the right decision for me and I think for Tennessee.
So you made this decision in August.
Yep.
Fishing.
Right.
Why keep it to yourself, and why make it now? I mean, is there any other reason that this is the right time for someone else to have this privilege, as you say?
Well, one, it's a big decision, and the way I like to make decisions is I like to make them, and then for this decision, I wanted to think about it for a while and make sure it was correct. So that's the first. And then second, if I were to change my mind and run, I wanted to get started. I wanted to get the president's support and discourage everybody else, raise the money I needed, and run a good, strong campaign. And if I'm not going to run, I don't want to be distracted from the last 2 years of my term. I mean, when I was governor, looking back, I got more done in my last 2 or 3 years than I did the whole rest of the term, even though people knew I was leaving.
Now, have you talked to anyone else about your replacement? I think we all know who the obvious person we're thinking about, but did you share this with Governor Haslam at some point before today?
I've talked with the governor. I called the president last night and I told him, before I could say anything, he said, well, Marcia worked out pretty well. And I said, yes, it did, and you helped her. And he said, well, let's talk about you serving another 20 years. I said, Mr. President, I'm going to announce tomorrow I'm not running. He said, well, why would you do that? And we talked about it. And we talked about who might replace him. And I told him that I wasn't going to pick a successor, that we had a whole barn full of good candidates. The obviously strongest candidate would be Governor Haslam if he decided to run. Another might be Ambassador Haggerty in Japan, who's from Gallatin and who's very close to President Trump. And he likes both of them. And then there are many congressmen, and there, Bill Lee's the governor. Who's the next Bill Lee? Somebody who we haven't heard of and who might want to be the senator. So I'll let the people make that decision.
But what did Governor Haslam tell you when you told him? And I presume you told him in the last 24 hours?
I did. I've told him.
After the president?
No, I'm not going to get into all of that. Who I told first. And I'll let Governor Haslam speak for himself. But I haven't told anybody until the last few days, even my staff, and I've wanted to let. I called Governor-elect Lee this morning. I called Senator Blackburn this morning. I called the president last night.
There's so many things that you might think about for your legacy. What do you think your legacy is?
Well, I hope I leave office with my reputation intact. That's hard to do in the world we live in today. I hope people think of me as someone who tried to get up every morning thinking of something good to do for the state and the country and went to bed most nights having done it. In terms of specific things in Tennessee, I think maybe bringing in the auto industry in the 80s, I think that's probably had more impact. Other governors have done so much to expand that. And building a road system up, starting the educational reforms, and then as a senator, I think it was fixing No Child Left Behind, getting rid of the Common Core mandate, sending more decisions back to local schools, 21st Century Cures, which Senator McConnell said was the biggest bill of the last Congress, and then the opioids legislation that President Trump just signed, which he said was the biggest response to a drug crisis in our history.
Still priorities. You got 2 more years. What are your priorities in the next 2 years?
Number one, reducing health care costs. We're wasting half of what we spend on health care is unnecessary, according to our own Institute of Medicine. And second, making sure a college education's worth it. I want to make it easier and simpler for students to go to college to get the student aid the federal government provides. and less complicated for the administrators who are dealing with a jungle of red tape.